Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
Michael Ellis, De-Bakey's 1975 publication, Development of the Artificial Heart, represents a pivotal document in the annals of medical engineering and cardiothoracic surgery. It functions as a comprehensive summary, a technical manifesto, and a strategic argument crystallizing a decade of intense research and a singular, momentous clinical event into a coherent narrative of progress. This essay undertakes a profoundly specific task of rigorous, section-by-section evaluation of the internal claims, methodological assertions, and conceptual frameworks presented within De-Bakey's work. The analysis will proceed by systematically dissecting the paper's core arguments as they unfold, examining the evidence marshalled in their support, and assessing the logical and rhetorical structure that underpins one of the 20th century's most ambitious medical projects. The objective is to move beyond mere historical summary and engage directly with the text as a scientific and intellectual artifact, evaluating its assertions from the perspective of its intended professional audience and its lasting impact on the field it sought to define. The essay will explore how De-Bakey constructs his case, from the establishment of the clinical need to the intricate details of device mechanics, the complexities of biomaterials, the validation through animal and human experimentation, and the prescient forecast of future challenge. Section 1. The establishment of a clinical and historical imperative. De-Bakey's paper commences by establishing the foundational premise for his work, the overwhelming clinical burden of end-stage heart disease. The text quantifies the problem with epidemiological statistics, framing the quest for a total artificial heart as a direct response to a massive unmet medical need. The argument presented is one of necessity. The paper claims that the limitations of medical management and the scarcity of donor organs for transplantation create a therapeutic vacuum that only a mechanical circulatory support system can fill. This section meticulously situates the Houston program's efforts within a broader historical context. It accomplishes this by referencing the pioneering work of figures like Kolff and Akutsu, thereby presenting the Lyotta-De-Bakey device as an evolutionary step rather than a revolutionary leap. The internal logic is powerful by acknowledging the lineage of research. The paper bolsters the credibility of its own contributions, portraying them as the culmination of decades of collective scientific endeavor. The evaluation of this introductory claim finds it to be a masterful piece of scientific rhetoric. It grounds the subsequent technical discussion in an unassailable humanitarian and scientific context, transforming an engineering problem into a moral and medical imperative. The provided statistics on cardiac mortality serve as the foundational data point upon which the entire argument for development is built, making the pursuit of the artificial heart appear both logical and ethically obligatory. Section 2. The mechanical design and hemodynamic principles of the Lyotta-De-Bakey pump. The paper proceeds to a detailed exposition of the artificial heart itself, the pneumatically driven biventricular device developed in collaboration with Domingo Lyotta. The core claim of this section is that the pump's design achieves effective, physiologically compatible circulatory support. De-Bakey presents the device's specifications with precision. It is described as consisting of two separate ventricles, each with an integrated atrium and inflow and outflow valves, fabricated primarily from silicone rubber, a material chosen for its flexibility and purported biocompatibility. The text asserts that the pump's geometry, specifically the smooth, streamlined blood flow pathways, is optimized to minimize turbulence and, by extension, the risk of blood trauma and clotting. The actuation mechanism, driven by an external pneumatic console, is claimed to be highly responsive. The paper argues a pump's output can be modulated by adjustment to drive pressure and beat rate, and that it inherently responds to changes in venous return, a critical feature for mimicking the Frank-Starling mechanism of the native heart. An evaluation of these claims reveals a focus on functional pragmatism. The design is presented as a robust, workable solution The evidence provided within this section is largely descriptive and theoretical, relying on diagrams and engineering principles to substantiate the claims of hemodynamic efficacy. The paper asserts that the design's simplicity is a key advantage, facilitating reliable operation. It is a subtle and intelligent argument, one that preempts potential criticisms of the device's reliance on the cumbersome external power source, while focusing the reader's attention on the elegance and effectiveness of the implanted blood pump itself. The intellectual wit of the design lies in its directness, a brute force engineering solution to a complex biological problem. Section 3. The critical challenge of biocompatibility and thromboresistance. This portion of the work confronts the single greatest obstacle in the development of any blood-contacting device: thrombogenesis. De-Bakey's central argument here is that a specific combination of materials and surface treatments can create a sufficiently thromboresistant interface for short-term clinical application. The paper details the use of Dacron fibrils on the internal surfaces of the pump. The claim is that these fibrils promote the formation of a stable, living biological lining, what the text terms a pseudointimer, derived from the patient's own blood elements. This cellular layer, it is argued, passivates the foreign surface, rendering it biocompatible. The evidence for this claim is drawn from explanted devices used in animal experiments. The paper presents macroscopic and microscopic images showing the development of this smooth, glistening lining. This is a critical assertion, as it transforms a potential failure point, the body's reaction to a foreign material, into a therapeutic advantage. The evaluation of this argument must acknowledge its ingenuity. The paper posits a cooperative relationship between the synthetic device and the host's biology. However, the claim's long-term validity remains an open question within the text itself. The evidence is confined to relatively short-duration animal implants. The paper implicitly acknowledges this limitation by framing the pseudointimer as a solution for temporary support, a bridge. It sidesteps the more difficult question of whether this lining would remain stable and non-embolic over months or years, a problem that would indeed vex the field for decades to come. The claim of biocompatibility is thus carefully circumscribed, presented as a qualified success sufficient for the device's intended and groundbreaking application. Section 4. Preclinical validation. Through in vivo animal experimentation, the paper substantiates its claims of mechanical reliability and physiological compatibility through a summary of its extensive animal research program, primarily involving calves. The central claim of this section is that these in vivo experiments successfully validated the total artificial heart's ability to sustain life and maintain adequate end-organ perfusion for extended periods. The text presents data from a series of experiments highlighting survival times that progressively increased as the device and surgical techniques were refined. A key piece of evidence is the survival of one calf for over 200 hours on total cardiac support. The paper presents this as definitive proof of concept. The argument is that this animal's sustained hemodynamic stability, normal renal function, and acceptable levels of hemolysis demonstrated that the De-Bakey pump was ready for clinical consideration. An evaluation of this section's claims requires careful reading. The paper focuses on the successes and the longest surviving animals. The causes of termination in other experiments, such as infection, mechanical component failure, or thromboembolic events, are mentioned but are positioned as learning experiences that led to iterative design improvements. The claim of validation is therefore based on a best-case scenario. This is a common and understandable approach in scientific reporting, yet it means the evidence presented is a curated selection intended to support a specific conclusion: readiness for human use. The paper successfully argues that the fundamental principles of the device have been proven sound in a living biological system, a necessary and crucial step in the translational pathway from the laboratory bench to the operating room. The weight of the evidence, as presented, is intended to make the subsequent step into human application appear both rational and ethically justified. Section 5, the seminal case and the birth of the Bridgetto transplant concept. This is the dramatic and intellectual centerpiece of the 1975 paper, the detailed account of the first human implantation of a total artificial heart in Haswell Car in 1969. The overriding claim of this section is that the clinical use of the De-Bakey device was a success because it fulfilled its primary, intended function. That function is defined explicitly as providing temporary circulatory support to a dying patient, keeping him alive until a human donor heart could be procured for transplantation. The paper frames the event as the first successful clinical demonstration of the Bridgetto transplant concept. The evidence presented is a narrative of the clinical course. The text describes the patient's moribund state preoperatively, the surgical implantation of the device, and the subsequent 6 to 4 hours during which the artificial heart maintained the patient's circulation. Hemodynamic data from this period is presented to show that the pump provided adequate cardiac output and blood pressure. The patient's temporary neurological improvement is cited as further proof of the device's efficacy. The evaluation of this claim must be exceptionally nuanced. De-Bakey's argument is precise and carefully bounded. The success being claimed is the performance of the device during its period of operation. The patient's death 32 hours after the subsequent heart transplant, from what the paper attributes to overwhelming infection and renal failure, is presented as a separate clinical event. The text's logic carefully decouples the performance of the artificial heart from the patient's ultimate outcome. It is an argument of profound significance, as it establishes a new metric for success in the field. The goal was longer life. The goal became the creation of a window of opportunity. This reframing was a paradigm shift, and the paper's primary claim is that the CARP case validated this new paradigm. This section is a masterwork of clinical scientific argument, presenting a technically complex and ethically fraught event as a clear, forward step. Section 6, a forecast of future directions and remaining challenges. The paper concludes with a remarkably clear assessment of the work that remains to be done. Having established the proof of concept for temporary total cardiac replacement, De-Bakey outlines the primary obstacles to a permanent, fully implantable artificial heart. The central claim here is that the future of the field rests on solving two main problems: power and durability. The paper argues that a reliance on an external, large pneumatic power console is the single greatest limitation for long-term use and patient mobility. It calls for the development of a fully implantable, self-contained power source, perhaps using electrical or nuclear energy, an audacious proposition for the era. The second major challenge identified is the long-term reliability and biocompatibility of the device itself. The paper acknowledges that while the pseudo-intima concept is viable for short-term use, a truly permanent device requires materials that are inherently thromboresistant and components that can withstand billions of cycles without mechanical failure. In evaluating these concluding claims, one is struck by their prescience. De-Bakey effectively wrote the research agenda for the next 30 years of artificial heart development. His identification of the need for an internalized power source anticipated the development of transcutaneous energy transfer systems and implantable battery technology. His call for improved biomaterials and mechanical durability defined the core engineering and materials science challenges that would preoccupy research groups worldwide. The argument is that the Bridgetto transplant is a validated reality, but the destination of permanent replacement requires a new generation of technological solutions. This conclusion solidifies the paper's status, transforming it from a mere report of past achievements into a foundational roadmap for the future of an entire medical discipline. In conclusion, Michael De-Bakey's 1975 treatise on the development of the artificial heart is a document of immense intellectual density and strategic purpose. A section-by-section evaluation of its internal claims reveals a carefully constructed argument that progresses with inexorable logic. It begins by establishing an undeniable clinical need, presents a pragmatic engineering solution in the form of the De-Bakey pump, and substantiates its efficacy with claims of hemodynamic stability and a novel approach to biocompatibility. The paper then leverages evidence from its animal program to assert the device's readiness for clinical use, a claim it then vindicates through its seminal framing of the Hasfel-Karp case. The success of this case is meticulously defined not by the patient's ultimate survival, but by the validation of the Bridgetop transplant paradigm, a conceptual masterstroke that redefined the goals of mechanical circulatory support. Finally, the work's concluding forecast of future challenges demonstrates a profound and unsentimental grasp of the long road ahead, particularly in the realms of power and long-term biocompatibility. The paper's enduring significance lies in this comprehensive structure. It is at once a historical record, a technical manual, and a visionary manifesto. The claims advanced, from the function of Dacron fibbles to the physiological stability of a calf to the successful bridging of a human patient, collectively build a powerful and persuasive case. The work stands as a testament to a unique moment in medical history, a period of heroic surgical innovation, and its true genius lies in its ability to present a complex, imperfect yet groundbreaking achievement as a coherent and compelling step forward for medicine.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.